Welcome to this week's edition of the Belau Report. I'm Jen Belau. Our guest this week is Senator Carla Nelson. And Carla, we welcome you back.
Great to be with you, Jane.
And this is the first time I think you've been back since the majority changed from the Republicans in the Senate to the Democrats. And tell me, what's the biggest, most important issue that's already been passed?
Well, one of the issues is just, it's not exactly passed, it's just a numbers issue. So we used to have 34 Republicans and 33 Democrats, and we saw votes that were that way, or often we had good bipartisan support. But now we're seeing most things straight partisan votes, 34 Democrats, 33 Republicans. So these things are passing on a one vote margin, which is very significant. I think some of the biggest things that are going to impact us are in the works that are coming now. One of those, I believe, is the paid family medical leave, which sounds good, but the way this particular proposal is written is it's $1.5 billion government program, a new payroll tax paid for by employers and employees to purchase a one-size-fits-all paid family medical leave. Now, most of our businesses are already offering a type of paid family medical leave that their employees want and demand, but this is a government one-size-fits-all policy. It's not actuarially sound at this point, and as I said, it's a new payroll tax, 200 new state employees to run this new government bureaucracy, and it doesn't provide for the individualization that employees want. And it's really, employers are going to not be able to offer the benefits that they offer now, and it's such a rigid government one-size-fits-all policy. I'll just give you one example. Some employers now are offering a 8-week paid family medical leave, like for maternity, for example, with 100% of pay. But this new government program would not allow that. It would say, oh, that's not sufficient because it's not 12 weeks at 66% pay. But it's just not meeting the needs of Minnesotans, and it's going to be a big government program. And it's not actuarially sound, so the costs will go up.
Is it a bill by itself?
Yes, this is a standalone bill that's making its way through the legislature right now. It came to the Jobs Committee last night, and we were debating that until about 9 o'clock last night. It only has one more committee stop, that's Finance, and then it's going to the Senate floor.
Okay, and what is the status of the bill right now?
Well, the status of the bill right now is that it is being geared up to pass. And as I said, the status now is $1.5 billion new payroll tax, government one-size-fits-all policy, and a 200 employees, a new 200 government employees to run this government mandated policy. And the worst thing is, a business can opt out saying, well, we have our own paid family medical leave, but it has to match. They have to apply to a deed to be able to be exempted from the state mandate. And if you don't follow the state mandate exactly, as I said, it's considered uncompliant.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So this is why many small businesses are opposing this, because of the tax?
Yes, that is correct. In fact, the Rochester Area Chamber sent a letter to the Senate opposing this. The chamber supports it, and the businesses that are listed there support it. Businesses all across the state, Jobs First, have not supported this, only because it's a new payroll tax, and more importantly, it doesn't let them design paid family medical leave to meet their employees' needs. This new government bureaucracy requires that it meet whatever the government says, which in some cases is people are going to be losing the benefits that they like at a cost that we don't even know for sure yet. It's only going to go up. And there's not been a good track history of this in other states that have tried it.
Okay, so this is now a bill.
It is a bill on the way to the Senate floor.
And is it going to pass the Senate?
I believe it will. So far, the Democrats have been voting lockstep, all 34 of them, which is enough to pass the bill. So unless one of them can change and vote against it, it will pass.
Okay, my goodness. And all right, that's one that's halfway anyway. Let's talk about the one that you think is the most onerous as a member of the new minority in the Senate.
Well, I think the most onerous bills are yet to come, and that would be the budget bills. The governor just released, the governor, the Democrat House, the Democrat Senate just released their budget targets, and it spends all of the $17+ billion surplus. It also increases taxes, and it robs the Health Care Access Fund, which you know is a tax on health care. So I think the new budget is going to be the most onerous thing that is going to be facing Minnesotans.
And because of that?
Because it increases spending so dramatically, it increases taxes. And much of the increased spending is growth in government programs, like the $1.5 billion paid family medical leave program as one example.
Okay. Now, you mentioned before we started recording this program, marijuana, and has that passed?
Oh, yes. Legalizing marijuana is another one of the initiatives of the new majorities. And there's a number of concerns with that. It has not passed yet. It's gone through a number of committees, each revealing more and more problems with the bill. Some of those major issues are, number one, public safety is not in support of this because there is no field sobriety test like a breathalyzer. So that's a danger there. Probably the biggest concern is marijuana remains on a Schedule I drug at the federal level, which does apply to the state of Minnesota. And because it's a Schedule I drug, number one, there hasn't been any research into marijuana, its 400 chemicals, and what might work for what conditions at what doses. But also because it's a Schedule I drug, that means this is going to be a fully cash business because banks cannot lend to something that is a Schedule I enterprise. And so to overcome that, the plan now at the legislature is for the state to provide grants, that means money, not paid back, to Minnesotans who want to open a marijuana business. And there's specific concerns about that and how those grants will be given out. With priority to people who have formerly been incarcerated or people of a certain ethnic background. So there's a lot of concerns really about grants, about state grants going to start a new business, which cannot start as most businesses do in the private sector with support from the financial industries because they cannot support a marijuana business because it still remains on Schedule I at the federal level. In many years, I have offered legislation, a resolution asking Congress to remove marijuana from the federal Schedule I, and I will do that again this year as well.
Okay. All right, that has not passed yet.
It has not passed yet. There's some thought that it's making its way through committees this year, but next year will be the year that the House will pass. It has a larger majority over there, and the Democrats have a 1-vote majority in the Senate. So it's tenuous at best.
Okay. All right. That's 2 bills. Now, how about the vote? And the people on probation, there are 50,000, I think, new voters.
Oh, yes, that bill did pass into law. And that bill is a bill that would change the sentencing for Minnesotans. So currently, Minnesota sentences people to incarceration when they are found guilty of a crime, and then of course a longer probation. That's how we do that in Minnesota. We have smaller incarceration times, longer probationary times, so that in an effort to remediate Minnesotans. The full sentence includes both probation, the incarceration and probation, and the restoration of voting rights. Does come at the end of probation now. The bill recently passed in the House, Senate, Governor signed into law, says that immediately people who have completed their sentence, well, not completed their sentence, before they've completed their sentence, those on probation, those voting rights will be restored.
Okay. Let's talk about the bonding bill. And where is that?
Oh, that's a good question. This is really a budget year, and the bonding years come in the even years. But as you know, last year, the House refused to take up a bonding bill. So just like the tax bill, the House refused to take it up. So it didn't pass. So there is a backlog of infrastructure projects that should be passed in a bonding bill. But right now, it's a little... it seems a little premature in trying to pass a bonding bill right now. Usually they're the last bill out of the station. The tax bill and the bonding bill are the last two trains or bills out of the station, so to speak. But this year, a bonding bill was put on the Senate floor rather early, just last week, even though the bonds cannot be let until August. So there's no bonding that's going to happen regardless of when a bonding bill is passed. Those bonds can't be let until August. And so many of us, including myself, believe that before we allow the state to go out and borrow $1.5 billion of money, that's what bonding is, for projects, many of them good projects, some not so much. But before we do that, we should return some of the $17+ billion surplus to Minnesotans who were overtaxed. And that was my position. And on Thursday on the Senate floor, I attempted to add an amendment that would do just that, that would remove that double taxation on Social Security benefits. And we've done that before. In fact, in 2020, right here, our own Senator Senjum, when he was offering a bonding bill, we added 5 tax provisions to help the bonding bill pass, things that were important to the legislature and to Minnesotans. And my amendment to add that removal of taxation on Social Security benefits almost passed on Thursday to that bonding bill until one senator changed his or her vote. And then it died 33 to 34. So there is interest, there is need, there is recognition that we do need to get tax relief out to Minnesotans now. And we have more weeks in session here. We're about halfway through, a little bit more, to come to a way to get that tax relief out the door, and of course a bonding project that has critical projects like extending 2 years ago in the bonding bill, I authored the bonding for the Rochester Airport that was a significant, almost $12 million to expand the runways and expand the Rochester International Airport. And because of COVID, that project's not done yet, and we just have to extend the use of the ability to use those bonds. So it's not new money, but it's extending the ability for the airport to use those bonding funds. We need to do that. And then, of course, Highway 14 and 44, that intersection has been dangerous. We've talked about it here. It's been fatal. One of our county commissioners died at that intersection. And the intersection is so dangerous that just this past summer, MnDOT came down and closed off, so it's not even a full intersection anymore. And if you go out there, you'll see people that need to drive miles and miles out of the way. And of course, traffic is backing up on these other streets like County Road 22 because of the additional traffic since that intersection has been turned into just a partial intersection. So certainly getting that full bonding for 14 and 44 so we can have a full safe intersection there is best. And of course, that's one of the provisions in the bonding bill. So there's a number of good things in there. We just need to get some agreement on there's going to be tax relief.
Okay, and that will come when?
Well, that is the question. I was really hoping, I serve on the bonding committee as well as the taxes committee, and I was really hoping that the bonding committee would work in a bipartisan way. We did let the senator, the chair, know that there weren't enough Republican votes. The bonding bill is the only bill that requires any Republican votes to pass. That's because bonding is borrowing dollars, and our Constitution requires that there be a 3/5 majority to pass a bonding bill. So it requires, I think, 6 Republican votes in the Senate to pass. And so we were hoping that this bonding bill would include some of that early tax relief and these projects, and that didn't happen. And so the Republican votes were not there to support that bonding bill at this time. But I had hoped that we would get back together and work on this bonding bill and the tax relief and see another one. And as I said, we have many more weeks to do that. But unfortunately, this week was kind of a hard week in the bonding committee. After that bill failed on the floor, the tax chair that very day pulled all the Republicans who had projects from the agenda and said, we're not going to hear that project today. And some of them were on their way down, driving down to the Capitol to testify, only to find out, oh, we're not on the agenda. And then in the bonding committee yesterday, we had 44 projects, and they were all Democrat bills. There wasn't a single Republican bill being heard in the bonding committee. So I'm hoping that maybe over the weekend there'll be a little bit of thought and reflection, and I'm really hoping we'll all work together. I know the bonding chair, she's a good senator. I'm hoping that her leadership will allow her to work in a bipartisan way to get to that bonding bill and also that tax relief.
Okay, what else is being proposed that is giving you either cause or to support it or to oppose it?
Yes, well, I'll tell you one thing that I think is really necessary, and we've seen this, and this is the grants. The state gives out grants to do things to help good things. And you might remember this fall we had the Feeding Our Future scandal, $250 million of fraud right here in Minnesota. And those indictments continue to come out, and people were using state taxpayer dollars right here in Minnesota. They said they were feeding kids, but they were feeding more kids than there were kids. They were feeding kids where they didn't have any food. Where there was no food being provided, and the judges are now finding that these taxpayer dollars were being used to buy expensive cars and houses and all types of other things. So it was a huge scandal. And the Office of the Legislative Auditor did a report earlier this week about how, the way we do grants in Minnesota has a lot of opportunity for fraud, and it's not unusual were the results. So I have a bill that's being introduced in the legislature next week that is taking all of those requirements or suggestions from the Office of the Legislative Auditor and to really tighten up our grants so they actually go to the intended target and do the intended thing and eliminate fraud. And one of the things, this is not exactly a grant, but it's another example of fraud where we're not really watching the money here in Minnesota. The Office of the Legislative Auditor also did a report on Southwest Light Rail. And you might remember that is $1 billion over budget. $1 billion over budget. And of course, it's years delayed. And the auditor's report was, there's a problem here because we have an unelected, unaccountable body, in this case the Met Council, who has jurisdiction to tax people, and they have no accountability. They're just appointed by the governor. So, and then in addition, they are saying, well, this is how much the project is going to be, and then there's all these new things that come up after the competitive bids, and they are further encumbering this money and tax money. And now the Office of the Legislative Auditor has said it's too expensive to continue We already got billions in. And it's too expensive to stop. I don't know where that leaves us. But what it does tell us is that, number one, people who have taxing authority and authorizing spending need to be accountable to Minnesotans. They need to be elected officials. And that's one thing that we need to do. And the other thing is, it talks about how the people who are making the decisions about the cost of the project are different than the people who are financing the project, who are authorizing the financing. So we really do have to tighten up. We've had billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud in our state. And we need, and that is on the government. We need to tighten those things up, and we need to make sure that grants, spending Minnesota taxpayer money, is done wisely and under public scrutiny.
Okay, now is someone advocating for those kinds of bills?
Yes, I am. Mine's being introduced on the Senate floor, I think, on Monday or Tuesday.
Are there no Democrats in the Senate that are interested in this?
I hope so. This should be a very bipartisan thing, not rooting out fraud, waste or abuse, as we say. This is just pure fraud. Really preventing that type of fraud from ever again happening, I think, is a bipartisan issue. So we'll see. I'm hoping for good bipartisan support.
Okay, and what day will that be?
I believe it will get its first reading on the Senate floor on either Monday or Thursday.
Okay. Now you have a full session next week?
Yes, we do. Full session, and then on April 5th is spring break. So we'll have a few days off between April 5th and April 9th.
Okay, and that will be for Easter?
That's our Easter Passover break. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so will there be new legislation introduced after that?
Yes, there can still be new bills introduced, but they face a little tougher climb to get to a vote. If there's only 3 committees in the Senate that are not subject to the deadlines, and today is the deadline for committees to get all policy bills out and to the Finance Committee. So the Finance Committee, the Taxes Committee, and the Bonding Committee are the only 3 committees that, without special rules allowing, would be able to continue to act on bills. Fortunately, I served on both the Taxes and the Bonding Committee, so I'll remain intricately involved. So there's a lot more to do, but and then pretty soon these bigger bills will start, these omnibus bills, which is a collection of like all the education bills in an omnibus bill, or all the public safety bills in a public safety omnibus bill. And those are very difficult. I don't think we serve our public very well with these huge omnibus bills because they're so big. There's so much in there that you can justify any yes vote or you can justify any no vote. So I'm cautious of these huge omnibus bills that mix policy and spending all into one bill.
I think Iowa voted a school choice bill. Is that correct?
Well, I haven't seen that legislation, but I think they have allowed a more school choice, and I don't know what their current status is. In Minnesota, we've been a leader in much of school choice in that we have charter schools, which are public schools, but they're led by the teachers of the charter school. And then, of course, we have PSEO, and so those type of things. But I think the Iowa version maybe went a little bit further and allows parents to use the dollars that their children get from the state for education. Instead of going to the schools themselves, the parents choose which school they would like those dollars to go to. So we have that in Minnesota called open enrollment. The parents could choose which public school their child would go to. But in Iowa, I think the parents can also choose whether it's a public school or a private school. And I'm thinking that might be the Iowa proposal.
But you have that in Minnesota now?
No, in Minnesota, we only have open enrollment between public schools. So a parent can say, well, I live in the Rochester School District, but I'd rather have my son or daughter go to the Stewartville School District. So the parents will open enroll their child into the Stewartville School District. But in Minnesota right now, these are all choices within the public school system. And some states, maybe Iowa, has also allowed parents to choose to send their child to a private school using those state dollars.
Okay. Now, in the big omnibus education bill, is there anything in there for school choice?
Oh, I don't. It's just being put together right now. Looking at the makeup of the majorities, typically the current majority is not very favorable to school choice. So I would be surprised if I saw something in that education bill that expanded school choice, but the bill hasn't been put together yet.
Okay. Now we are in our last 5 minutes, and I want to give you a chance to talk to your constituents and the people who are listening and interested in schools, in institutional budgets, anything that's likely to be taken up in the legislature.
Well, thank you.
So
I'd be glad to. Well, first, I just want to note what a pleasure and honor it is to work for you at the Capitol. And I want to thank all of the district residents who have come up to the Capitol this year. It's really wonderful to have people back in the Capitol after several years of COVID, not being able to get folks in the Capitol. It's just really a joy to have you there. I've seen many of you at the Capitol in my office, off the legislative chambers, or in the rotunda of the Capitol, and I just want to thank you for bringing your voices. That is the most important thing. And then also, as we look ahead, we are in kind of these final weeks of the session where these bills are coming together and will be coming to the Senate floor for votes, and I need to hear from you. So I would encourage you to contact me. I think they'll put up my email address, sen.carla.nelson@senate.mn. And because I know it's not possible for all of you to come to the Capitol for speaking to me about legislative issues, or if you need help with any state agency, any state government issue, I am starting some in-district office hours, and the first one will be Saturday, April 1st from 9 to 11, and that's at Cabin Coffee in Stewartville. So email me, tell me you'd like to come. My assistant, I've got her set, so she will set up a 15-minute spot a certain time so we can chat. I need to hear from you. And again, that just email me and we'll get you set up there for a time for that. And these Saturdays with the senator will in district hours will start on April 1. They will not happen on April 8th, which is Easter weekend, but they will continue after that. And they will be at different coffee shops throughout the district. So stay tuned for that. And you can see that on my newsletter. If you have not signed up for that, just email me, sign up for that. We'll be glad to put that in the newsletter. And then stay tuned to the news, to the legislature, as you see these big omnibus bills rolling through. They're going to have many, many, many provisions in them. And I'm going to listen to you as we look at those provisions. I do have concerns about the increase in the budget. The state budget has, according to the governor and the DFL plans, is increasing significantly, along with additional taxes to pay for that. And as I said, robbing the healthcare access fund, which is a problem. So there's a lot more work to do. There's more big issues to come, the budget being a big one, certainly hoping to get a good bipartisan bonding bill out the door. We have very needed infrastructure, things such as continuing the Rochester Airport expansion. We passed those bonds several years ago. COVID means that we need to allow a little bit more time for the use of those bonds. And then, of course, Highway 14 and 44 intersection. That needs a full functioning intersection. I have 3 bills for that, actually. We're putting it in every place that I think could be possible. Cash, bonding, transportation. It's very important that we get that done. And then there's some other important things like the Casson flood relief, Dodge County Transfer Station, Wasioja. Here in Rochester, there's the MRF, Minnesota, the recycling facility, which is a great energy efficient, environmentally friendly initiative, which will be, hopefully we'll get that through this year. So there's a number of issues still to come, and we're hoping we get those in state bonding bills as well. So again, reach out to me, sen.carla.nelson@senate.mn.
Okay, and what is your contact information?
Well, the number is 651-296-5956. That will get right to my Senate desk. And if you email me, that would be sen.carla.nelson@senate.mn. I will be able to contact you. I'll be able to hear from you, and please weigh in on some of these huge issues coming forth, particularly paid family medical leave. That's going to be a big issue coming forth. It's going to impact all Minnesotans. I'd like your input on that, and I'd also like your input on, well, any of the issues coming forward, but of course legalizing marijuana is one that's continuing to make its way through the Senate. I'd like to hear from you on that, and of course any of the other issues that are important to you. Education continues to be at the top of the list, hoping that we get those high quality early learning scholarships which prepare kids for kindergarten, and let the parents choose. Now there is school choice, Jane, right there in those high quality early learning scholarships. The parents get to choose exactly whether it be center care, in-home care, child care, where those should be.
All right. Senator Carla Nelson, thank you for taking the time. I know that your schedule is really packed, and thank you for enlightening us about legislation proposed and being considered already. We'll look forward to hearing from you again at the end of the session.
Thank you, Jane. It's great to be with you.
Thank you, our viewers, for your interest in Minnesota and its legislature, its legislative activities, and how it affects your city, your county, your school district, your state, and your nation. And we'll be with you again next week, same time, same channel. Have a very good week and a very good night.